Sometimes you don't need super in-depth mechanics or a deeply gripping story to make a good game. Sometimes your aesthetic and visuals can just be so on point that they can elevate everything else in the game into something that truly feels polished and special. It is incredibly rare, but that's exactly what I found in the Gardens Between. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm going to tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're reliving childhoods in the Gardens Between. Manipulating time isn't a new mechanic by any stretch of the imagination, but how the Gardens Between plays with that mechanic feels incredibly fresh. Because it's not time manipulation as a special power, it's time manipulation as a form of movement. So this is how it works. There are 2 characters, Arena and Friend, and your job is to get them and their ethereal lamp from point A to B as they traverse a series of gorgeously themed islands. The twist, however, is that you have no control over either Arena or Friend. Both characters move through the environment entirely of their own accord, doing whatever they want. They stop to look at things that interest them, lag behind, run ahead, pass each other up, and generally act like kids would when suddenly transported to a bunch of wondrous, mystical islands. So instead of taking direct control of the characters themselves, you control time. Time sits entirely inert until you act on it, either to reverse it or let it continue forward. And as you do, the kids go along on their predetermined adventure until they hit a roadblock. In a lot of ways, every level of the Gardens Between kind of feels like playing with a hand-cranked Zoetrope. And what a goddamn beautiful Zoetrope it is! One of the biggest ways the Gardens Between benefits from its core design is its animation. It is incredible just how much more space the developers have to animate a character when they don't have to play around the million edge cases of a human being driving them. Arena and Friend are some of the most human-feeling and moving characters I've seen in a long time. They poke and prod things, they sometimes just stand still and take in the horizon, they wave to each other, Friend gets nervous and stops where Arena just keeps forging ahead, and then Friend hurries to catch up. And overall, both have a dynamic range of motion that just can't be done with player-controlled characters. Between all their constant custom animations and all the different elevations they have to walk at, there's barely even a standard walk cycle to speak of. And even in the moments when there is, you'd never catch it, because their surroundings are just as alive and full of motion as they are, to say nothing of how majestically it's all rendered. I only bring up a game's graphics on extremely rare, notable occasions, and let me tell you, this is one of the most visually striking games I've played all year. I'd take this over a AAA game showing off every pore of my character's skin any day. Not everything in the game is subject to your Zoetrope spinning time powers, however, and this is where the Gardens Between gets its puzzle on. At the center of every puzzle is the lantern that Arena carries through each level. It starts every level unlit, and you have to find a way to light it before bringing it to the altar at the end of each level. And depending on if it's lit or not, the lantern interacts with its environment in different ways. For example, these clouds are dispelled when exposed to the lantern, so you sometimes need it to be lit to get past a wall of clouds, but then have to extinguish it so you can make it over a cloud bridge. Puzzles only get more complex from there. While Arena controls the lantern, you need Friend to do anything else, primarily hitting levers to manipulate the environment. And while Arena traditionally takes point, puzzles can get further complicated on later islands when Friend goes first or the 2 characters start taking entirely different paths. The puzzles in the Gardens Between aren't rigorous brain twisters that will test the limits of your powers of deduction, but they are usually pretty clever. To spoil one of like 24 examples, one island starts with Friend getting curious about a giant VCR remote and prodding it to no effect. And at first, it just feels like one of those little no-consequence animations of them interacting with the environment. But 20 feet later, you find a big power cord to plug in, and then you go back to the remote, and it turns out that button Friend idly pressed was the rewind button, which in turn pops the VCR tape out and creates a new ramp to go up. Like, do you kind of see what I mean here when I say that the puzzles aren't ever going to really make you think, but they're just so damn fascinating and fun to watch play out? The last thing we need to get to is the story, which is largely non-existent, but there's just enough of a thread to make it worth talking about for a second. A lot of the islands are themed around different memories that the 2 kids share of growing up, and, well, being kids together. Its story may be generic, but it's the right kind of generic, the kind of open-ended narrative that feels universally relatable instead of a paint-by-numbers affair. A lot of the memories are just quick 3-second snippets of kids acting like kids, but we've all been kids before. And our own memories of childhood are enough to trigger the nostalgia buttons and fill in all the blanks. Alongside the whimsical exploration of these nostalgia-laden islands, it's all very warm and wholesome, if perhaps a little on the popcorny side. So let's get to the verdict. This week I think I want to do something just a little bit different. Instead of a verdict, let's just ask, what do you get out of 5 hours with the Gardens Between? And the answer is, well, everything. It actually only took me roughly 2 hours to complete the game. And there are a few achievements you can hunt down by doing specific and weird things, basically invisible bonus puzzles, but by and large, I don't see much replayability in the game either. But don't let that dissuade you. Those 2 hours were absolutely fantastic, and I don't regret my purchase at all. This game is just so beautiful to look at and entertaining to watch unfold that my earlier Zoetrope metaphor feels more poignant almost every paragraph I write. Overall, though, I have a hard time classifying the Gardens Between. It doesn't feel like it has quite enough substance to feel deep or revelatory, but it has too much impact and beauty to be considered a popcorn game either. But without a doubt, it's worth checking out. Its mechanic is a little on the light side, but it still feels very fresh, its animation delights, and overall, it's just a very feel-good, wholesome game. I 100% recommend this one. Hey, do you believe that your time is the most valuable thing you have? Do you want to find more games that respect that time? This channel is all about finding games that don't pad themselves and can be completed in a reasonable amount of time. So if that sounds appealing to you, then consider hitting that subscribe button. But regardless, thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.